It was only a matter of time, wasn't it? When I decided to do these movies, there was one movie I really wanted to talk about, which was Spider-Man 2, because I honestly believed it was a really overrated movie. And I like talking about movies that I don't necessarily understand the hype for and stuff like that, because I feel like that there are some really good points that they're missing on some of those movies, and Spider-Man 2 was a culprit of that. But now we've gotten to the one movie that I think majority of the people, even the fans of the Raimi trilogy and Maguire's interpretation of Spider-Man, can agree on, and it's this movie. I don't think I need to say anything else. Movie has been shunned, run down, and hated upon for many, many different reasons. Some reasons extending to too many villains, to how they handled the villains, to rewriting the origin story in some weird ways, to I mean, the list of complaints for this movie goes on and on. So, I saw all these movies when they came out in theaters. And I was actually really excited for this one because Venom is my personal favorite Spider-Man villain. I know Ock and Goblin are two great villains also, but there's always just been something about Venom that I've liked a lot. I mean, shoot, I even have his first appearance right here. This isn't a reprint. This is an actual issue of 300. Pretty good condition too. I took it out of its bag just so, you know, I could show it off to you if I wanted to show something off in the actual book itself. This book's expensive too. And it's the most expensive book in my collection. Now, talking about my dad's collection, that's a completely different story. But for my personal collection, which isn't all that fantastic to begin with, that's like the pride and joy of my personal collection. So I was excited. I was a bit skeptical when I heard that Sandman was going to get put in the movie. I was a bit skeptical when I heard that. Well, I mean, I was excited for Harry's run as the Green Goblin. Then I saw his design. I was like, I mean, props for them not doing what the comics did and gave him the exact same suit, but you could have done something better than a skateboard. But I was hopeful, and I was excited to see Venom put into live action. And then, probably just like many other people, we left the theaters thinking, was that movie supposed to be taken seriously or what? Even to this day, like I just watched this movie again last night for this review, and I'm having a hard time figuring out if this movie is supposed to be taken seriously or not. If it's supposed to be taken seriously, then it's terrible. And if it was supposed to be taken as a joke, then it's still a pretty bad movie. Because it took every character that I was excited for in this one. It was to see how, if they were actually able to progress the MJ Peter relationship story and Venom and the conclusion of the Harry Osborn storyline, and see all of it conclude in one awesome ending to this trilogy, which originally wasn't going to be the end of the trilogy. It was originally going to be a fourth movie, but so let's get into the story for this. It starts off with Peter and MJ's relationship in a very, very good, stable position. They're dating happily, but we see that Harry's kind of growling over Peter. When Peter's leaving the play, he runs into Harry, and Peter tries to talk to him about the incident with his dad, and Harry says there's nothing to talk about and just storms off. Peter and MJ go have like a little lay under the stars night at the park when they're talking and having gushy gushy moo moo time. Asteroid, Black Ooze comes out. Probably the laziest introduction of the symbiote I've ever seen because it just it's like random coincidence more than anything else. In the comics, it was because they're on War World. Was that what it was called? War World. I think that was the name of the place. And jumped into a machine that was supposed to repair his clothes, his costume. And when he came out, he had an oozy substance on him. Thing turned out to be the symbiote. Boom, boom, boom. In the '90s animated series, it was attached to John Jameson's space shuttle and latched on to Spider-Man when he was trying to save the spaceship from being ambushed by, I think it was Rhino? I don't remember. I haven't seen the '90s show in so long. And then in Spectacular, it was brought in by Jameson's shuttle again and was taken in by Connors for research. And it was let loose when Black Cat was trying to steal it. But here, it just landed in the park that Spidey was in on a meteor and attached to his moped as he was driving off with Mary Jane. Kind of a lazy introduction to the symbiote. Cut to a criminal trying to escape. He goes back to his house and sees his daughter. This is Flint Marko. If you know anything about Spider-Man, you should know who this is. He gets his iconic green striped shirt when he's talking to his, I think, wife or ex-wife or something, and his daughter, saying, like, having nice, welcoming home time with his daughter, and his daughter gives him a locket with her picture in it, and he leaves as the police catch up to him. So we cut to Harry in the chamber we found the goblin stuff taking the serum, and then he goes after Peter after Peter came back from Aunt May's house asking or telling her that he was gonna ask MJ to marry him. She gave Peter her own wedding ring to give to Mary Jane, kind of like a approval or something. So, without Peter's spider sense working, he grabs Peter off of his moped, and we actually have this pretty awesome fight sequence between Peter and Harry over the streets of New York and through a unusually long alley in between buildings. Well, that's what an alley is, in between buildings, but this alley was actually pretty long. They were swinging in a straight line there for like a good minute, or something, with no street or anything. Especially with how fast they were going, it shouldn't have been that long of an alleyway. But the fight ends with Peter tripping Harry, bashing him into a pipe, and then he gains amnesia from the hit in the hospital. And Peter and Harry kind of go back to being friends because Harry doesn't remember anything from the previous 3 movies at all. He just knows that his dad was killed. He doesn't know how. So the city is going to honor Spidey for being the hero. Like, give him the key to the city and all this stuff. But like the night before, Marko fell into a testing chamber or something. It was like a molecule. I don't know what the heck it was called exactly. It was some weird, I don't know what they were trying to do. It doesn't make any sense, but he fell into it and it fused his molecules with sand. Sandman. Couple problems with this scene. One, he crawled into the place over a fence that was barbed wire and he had no trouble getting over it. That doesn't really make any sense, but alright. 2, there's this giant concrete hole in the ground with lights shining onto it. How the heck did he not see it? 3, when the scientists said that there was a change in the mass or something inside the pit, and they said it was just a bird, well, isn't that something you should be concerned about and go out there and maybe check just in case it's not a bird? 4, how did the police get in there without the scientists knowing, without informing the scientists that, there was an escaped convict that jumped your fence somehow and ran in here. We can't find him anymore. 5, why didn't the scientists check the thing after they were done to see that there was a locket in the sand, that maybe there's a dude in there? And then 6, speaking of the locket, if it was fusing molecules within that chamber, why isn't Sandman part whatever the heck that locket was made of? Because last time I checked, that thing is made of molecules too. Kind of scientifically incorrect with that, or inconsistent with that. That whole scene, I mean, as cool as it looked, seeing Sandman come out of the sand and try to grab the lock and everything, there was just a list of questions and things wrong with that scene. It was kind of stupid, actually. So we cut to the Super Happy Day parade thing, and we see MJ's down because she was cut from the play she was on, but she hasn't told Peter for some reason. But Peter's all happy because the city's basically celebrating him, and she's kind of jealous. So he comes in once they welcome him to the stage. He swings in and gives Gwen Stacy, yes, Gwen Stacy. That's another rant I'm gonna have at the end of this video. Gives her like a kiss for like media publicity, but it makes MJ jelly, and that's kind of another thing I want to bring up. And it goes to my problem with this incarnation of Mary Jane, period. But we see Sandman being chased by the cops because I identified him as the guy that escaped, and he starts beating up people because he jumped into a truck full of sand. Sandman goes to rob an armored bank truck, and Spidey jumps and try to fight him, kind of getting his butt kicked because he can't fight sand, obviously. So Captain Stacy calls Peter in and says, well, that guy that died didn't really kill your uncle. This guy did. His name is Flint Marko. So now all of a sudden we're changing the person that killed Uncle Ben to Sandman. So now Peter has it out for this guy because he's seen him, he knows what he looks like, and he let him get away. So Peter's listening to his police radio, trying to sleep after a long day of sitting around and not getting anything. The symbiote crawls out from underneath his dresser and covers him up, and he wakes up outside in the black suit. The laziest black suit design ever. Just take the traditional movie suit, paint it all black, and add like little interior. Because the spider was like this, but now the top 4 legs are kind of bent inward up top, and then that's your suit. It's lazy. Now, there was a picture that went up, a few months ago of the original design for the black suit. It was kind of like a shiny black suit with the traditional black suit spider on it, but it didn't go all the way around. It was just kind of like how it was on Venom's suit. It was just like a little chest symbol. But it was pure black, and they didn't use it because they said it looked like he was wearing bondage latex, like a bondage suit or something. But to be perfectly honest, I liked it that way because it looked more, it looked goofy from the shot, but I mean, in the movie, it probably wouldn't have looked that bad. I mean, it looked more traditional, looked like the traditional suit. The black suit that we all know and love. I mean, if you're going to do this, at least replace the spider on his chest with a white Venom spider design. Now, that actually wouldn't have looked that bad. Just take the regular movie suit, paint it black, but add a big white Venom spider on the front and back. That would have been fine, but no, you just altered the spider that was already on a suit a little bit. It was a lazy black suit design. I don't like it. I mean, I liked it at first because I liked the idea of it just being a black version of his regular suit, but now it's stupid. So he swings around and messes around, getting used to how the suit feels. He ends up finding out where Marco is, so he goes after him, and before he goes into the sewers to chase after him, Eddie Brock shows up. Yes, I haven't established that Eddie's in this movie yet, but he is. He's dating Gwen, and he's a photographer for the Bugle. He's trying to be. He's kind of the guy who's trying to take Peter's job of taking pictures of himself, and Spidey breaks his camera because they're in competition to try to win the Bugle's lead photographer position. Spidey breaks his camera and jumps in, and Brock pulls out another camera and starts taking pictures. So he chases Sandman down inside the subway, and they have an interesting little fight on the rail tracks where Spidey keeps pushing him into the train and his body explodes, but he keeps forming himself back together. They fight their way down to the bottom where there's water pipes everywhere, and Spidey pulls a pipe open and sends him into the sewers, turning him into mud. Spidey thinks he killed Sandman, but he really didn't. And Aunt May told him that you can't let revenge take control of you. It'll make you do nasty things, and that's kind of what he was doing. He was angry at this guy and was trying to kill him, and he thought he killed him, so he put the black suit away. While this is happening, Mary Jane is going through some more job problems, and she ends up going to Harry's place instead of Peter for some reason, and those two accidentally kiss, and here we go back with the love crap. Mary Jane leaves for feeling like she made a mistake, and all of a sudden Harry gets his memories back after he kind of was looking at the picture of his dad or in a mirror of himself, and then he remembered everything and what he was trying to do. So when Peter calls MJ, he's there. Harry's there in his new Gauntlet armor and convinces MJ to break up with him. Peter meets her at the bridge. I completely forgot the proposal scene, but who cares? It was just MJ getting butt mad because Peter was having success and she wasn't. And Peter didn't understand why, because MJ was too stupid to tell him that she had lost her role in the play. Whatever. And she breaks up with him because Harry told her to. Now, this is something stupid because Harry wasn't like holding a gun to her head or anything. She could have just said, Harry remembers everything. Go beat him up. Please, just go beat him up. But instead, she actually goes through with it. Why? I mean, he was just standing there on a tree like a good 30 feet away just watching. He couldn't have done anything to you to like convince you to stay on the course that he wanted you to stay on. You could have just told him that that he remembered and just go fight him. And she didn't do it. She's stupid like this. This is why I hate this incarnation of Mary Jane. She's an idiot. She always has been. So she actually does it, and then they show a clip of Peter and Harry in a cafe or something. Peter explaining it to him. Harry tells him that she left the play. Peter was surprised that he didn't tell her. And then Harry admits to himself that he's the guy that MJ left Peter for. So Peter starts walking away, and then he kind of realizes that Harry kind of remembered. He turns around and you see Harry kind of do like that sarcastic wink, and then as a truck disappears, he's gone. He pulled a Batman. Now, when I was watching this scene, I started laughing because I could just picture Harry like leaning back, winking. As soon as the truck goes by, he just like jumps under the table so he couldn't be seen anymore. I'm just thinking about seeing him go, and then the truck goes by, he just flails onto the ground. So I just had to pause the video and laugh at my own little It's kind of funny because there's a dude in the bar that as soon as the truck passes by and you don't see Harry, there's like a dude at like the bar that like, turns around and looks at where Harry was sitting. So it even kind of backs up that Harry kind of just like flailed onto the ground. It's a funny thought. Just watch that scene and then you'll see what I mean. I want to imagine that's what happened. It's just funny seeing him just plop to the ground in my head. So now Peter's in his apartment again, gazing into the wall like a moron. And he decides to put on his black suit again and goes after Harry at his apartment. They have a fight, basically taunting each other like a bunch of douchebags. When Peter punches Harry into the goblin chamber, is what I'm going to call it. He knocks him out, and while Peter's walking away, Harry throws a pumpkin bomb at him. He webs the bomb back at Harry and it blows up in Harry's face as he leaves. And while he's leaving, walking down an alleyway, he sees a mirror and he brushes hair over his eyes. And then... he sees a Daily Bugle article with a black suit picture of Spider-Man saying, Spider-Man shows a true color. So he goes to the Bugle, calls Brock out, shows Robbie that the photo was doctored, and Jameson fires him. So now Brock hates Peter. And then we get the stupid scene of him strolling down the sidewalk to jazz music, acting like a pompous dickwad. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Probably one of the worst moments in comic book movie history. It's down there with that god-awful explanation as to how Wolverine lost his memories in the X-Men movies. And all of Batman and Robin. Oh, and it gets worse. Trust me. It can get worse than this. So we see him walking to a jazz club with Gwen when Brock is staring him down, saying, "You took my woman." And while they walk in, they see Mary Jane's a waiter there and everything. So she starts singing, and then Peter gets up and plays piano and jazz dances around the bar. I thought I was watching Spider-Man 3, not Blues Brothers. He ends... After they get done dancing, Gwen realizes that Peter did this to try to get Mary Jane jealous. And Gwen storms out, and MJ gets upset with him. And when the bar people try to throw Peter out, he starts fighting off the security guards and actually pimp hands MJ across the face. Now, this part is supposed to be the moment where Peter realizes that he's gone too far and the suit's taken him over. And we're supposed to feel sorry for him, but with how bad this movie's been up to this point, with Peter hashtag swagging his way down the sidewalk, and with what kind of a character Mary Jane is, we kind of don't feel any repercussions from this, because I found it hilarious that he slapped her, and I'm just like, oh, I don't care, hit her again for all I care. I don't like this character. Shoot, I'll go down there and help you. But this is supposed to be the big moment where we feel sorry for him, that he's realized he's gone too far and he's broken his life. The problem is, like I said, it's been laughable, and we don't like Mary Jane. Hopefully we don't like Mary Jane up to this point, so it doesn't work. So he goes to a church and is moping around. Then he goes inside the church with the bell ringing, and it starts to hurt the suit. Classic moment from Web of Spider-Man #1, which is the issue where he gets rid of the black suit, the symbiote black suit, and then wears an actual handmade black suit costume that he wore for a while until 300, where he tossed it aside for his classic suit again. While there, Brock is praying, and he asks God to kill Spider-Man, or to kill Peter, because that's how religion works, right? He hears the bell ringing. He goes into the tower and looks up and sees Peter somehow from all the way up there ripping off the black suit. And when he's ripping it off, the suit slowly starts to drip on Brock. We see Eddie squirming and squirming, and then roar Venom face. I checked to make sure when Venom first showed up. An hour and 43 minutes into the movie is when Venom finally shows up. Keep that in mind. This movie is how long? 139 minutes. 139 minutes? That can't be right. That can't be right. An hour and 139 minutes. 120. That doesn't sound right to me. Hour, 120. No, that's about right. Yeah, because 120 minutes, 2 hours. Okay, I'm getting my numbers mixed up. So that would be what, 2:19? Yeah, 2 hours 19 minutes. He shows up at about an hour 43. So that'd be like what, the last half hour or so of the movie to focus on Venom. Yeah, boy. So he's kind of moping around the city, feeling bad for himself. So when MJ goes to leave for her work, she jumps in a taxi and. You want to know, Baylor just tied it up. I had to get told something. Sorry about that. I don't edit videos, so just deal with it. The taxi gets hijacked by Venom. So we cut to Peter in his apartment watching the new, or he was walking down the street and he sees that Venom is holding MJ hostage at a construction yard with her in a taxi. Now before this, Venom recruits Sandman to help him. And this brings up another question I have. This whole movie, hasn't Sandman just been trying to, get money and maybe leave town? He doesn't want to fight anybody, right? So when Venom asks him, do you want to team up with me because we both want to kill Spider-Man? Sandman says yes to this. At what point has Sandman admitted that he wanted to kill Spider-Man? I thought he just wanted to get money for his daughter and then maybe leave town. That's what I was getting out of his character at this point. At what point did he want to kill Spidey? And I got another thing to back this up after the fight scene. When he puts on a suit, drops by Harry's house and asks him for his help, saying that Mary Jane needs the two of us. You see that his face is scarred and everything from the pumpkin bomb, and Harry tells him to leave. Peter swings to the eventual battle scene. Now we get probably one of the dumbest moments in this trilogy. His butler walked up to Harry, and said that when he was cleaning Norman's wound, he said that the wound was from a blade from his own glider. So you knew this entire time. You've known this ever since the end of the first movie. Why are you just now telling Harry this? After all the damage is done, after he's screwed his two best friends' relationship up, gotten his head clanged onto a bar or a ledge like 5 times in this movie. It's going to happen to him again in the final fight scene. And having his face blown up to where the side of his face is all scarred up and everything. Now you tell him this? Seriously? I mean, come on. This is just stupid. If you would have told him this, you know, maybe sometime during Spider-Man 2 would have been nice. But you wait until now to say something? Okay. This movie is terrible. So we go to Peter swinging up to the site, and when he's about to reach MJ, clonk, Venom. And did I mention that Brock is played by Topher Grace, aka Eric Foreman from That 70s Show? Yeah, brilliant casting choice there, Sam Raimi. Loved it. Actually, I think Topher Grace would have been a better Peter Parker than Maguire. Definitely would have been a better Peter Parker than he was a Eddie Brock, but that's another thing altogether. But half the time he rolls the face back and we just see Topher Grace's weird bent eyebrow the entire time. Like, they had like these little symbiote arm things over his face, and one of them was like caught on his eyebrow to where his left eyebrow was kind of like a right angle or something, like the entire time or something. This was stupid. And his voice didn't even sound like Venom, and when he screamed, he sounded like a jaguar. Instead of like, Gah! He was like, Grah! That was terrible, but you know what I mean. And his jaw, I mean, good gosh, Venom's mouth opened like, it didn't even open down like this, it like just dropped or something. It was stupid. I mean, at least his eyes look cool, but. And plus, they gave him the web design that Spider-Man has on his suit. I mean, I'm somewhat okay with this Venom design. My main problem is that the Venom spider on his suit isn't white. It's kind of a blackish silver to where it blends in with the rest of the suit. And he's not big. Eddie Brock is supposed to be a muscle-bound bear. Venom is supposed to be huge. I mean, let me look in his first appearance of an Amazing Spider-Man number 300. See how much bigger he is than Spidey? Look at him. He's a bear. There he is working out and everything. Look at how big Venom is compared to Spidey. He's huge compared to Spidey. But they're like the same size. Maybe Spidey's a bit more bulky than Venom is. And it just looks... Because that's one of the things Venom's always been able to toss Spidey around like a rag doll. But here, Spidey's more muscular than Venom is. And it just doesn't work. So Venom teases him while the web's holding the taxi cab that MJ's in starts collapsing. And while this is happening, Harry comes out of nowhere when Peter's about to fall, admitting that I was wrong. He comes in and helps him once Venom ties him down and Sandman starts pounding him with his fist, and everybody's like freaking out because they think Spidey's going to die. And then he came in and rescued him. So Spidey goes after Venom and Harry goes after Sandman. Harry ends up blowing Sandman up with a couple missiles somehow. And Peter ends up saving MJ after she falls. And Peter kind of gets clobbered by Venom a little bit. He ends up putting Spidey in a position where he's got like a spiked javelin type thing against his throat. And Harry comes in and smacks Venom through a wall. As Harry was trying to untie Spidey, Venom jabs Harry with the board through his back and then tosses him over the cliff. Spidey breaks free and then traps him in a ring of poles and hitting him with another pole to create vibrations to break the symbiote up. He manages to break it up enough to where he can pull Harry out, and the symbiote starts growing larger, whatever, and then somehow he managed to pull a pumpkin bomb out of the glider board thing and throws it at the symbiote, Brock jumping in after it and killing both of them. So now he has lost Venom. What's up with this movie series killing people? Peter, as he is about to leave, runs to the Sandman, and Sandman says, "It wasn't really my fault. My friend was robbing the people so I can get money for my little girl, and I just asked your uncle for his car so we can help get away. He was trying to help me out by saying, 'Don't do this to yourself.' When my friend came by, he surprised me and my finger twitched and shot him in the chest." Peter forgives him. So now nobody's at fault for Uncle Ben dying. And we're supposed to be okay with this for whatever reason. Peter meets up with MJ as Harry dies with them. Peter's crying face is hilarious because it looks stupid. And then they bury Harry. They bury Harry. And the movie closes with Peter going to the jazz club where Mary Jane was and them hugging, concluding absolutely nothing. Yeah, so that was bad. Ugh. Where do I begin? I kind of ranted a lot on some of the story elements as I went through. Like how everybody's stupid. MJ not telling Peter that, Harry remembers. The butler being stupid for waiting until the very last possible second to tell Harry about how Osborn died. And then Sandman, who teamed up with Venom to kill Spidey. After the fight, he said, "I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to have anybody die." Right before he told Peter about what happened to Uncle Ben. Then why did you team up with Venom if you didn't want this to happen? Seriously. Everybody in this movie's stupid. I mean, more stupid than they were in the other two movies, but everybody in this movie is a goddamn idiot. From top to bottom. Just everybody is stupid. What was Brock's reasoning for turning into Venom and trying to kill Spider-Man in the comics? Well, Venom broke a story about a mob boss. Spidey found the real mob boss, made Brock's story fake, ruined his credibility throughout the media business, caused him financial problems, wife left him. Eddie Brock considered Spider-Man ruining his life, so when the black suit got a hold of him, he began to train himself. The symbiote told him who he was, what his weaknesses were, and then he went after Spidey for that. And here, what is it? Got him fired from the Daily Bugle and lost his girlfriend. I mean, granted, he still lost all credibility, but I mean, couldn't you just move to another place? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it was all that as intense either. And plus, Venom was shoehorned into the movie. Even though Venom is like one of the biggest villains, and Spider-Man has the biggest and most interesting lead-in to a villain in the comics ever. It's kind of shoehorn him into the movie. I mean, like I said, he's not big. I mean, shoot, he doesn't even say "we are Venom" ever. He says, I. That alone ticked me off. Because that's one of the coolest things Venom ever says. We are Venom. Him, Brock, and the symbiote talking in unison. That never happened here. That's Venom's most iconic phrase, and you didn't even put it in the movie. On top of that, Sandman was made to be a tragic villain. And to be honest, I'm just going to say it, he was a better tragic villain than Doc Ock was in Spider-Man 2. Even though Sandman's purpose in this movie was completely unnecessary. They could have done just fine without Sandman. They did not need him in this movie. I felt like Spider-Man 3 could have been better without him and made the story center more around Harry's thing and the Venom story. But then again, I feel like that they could have handled the Goblin thing better if they kind of left it out of this movie, maybe. Or they could have introduced the symbiote in Spider-Man 2, had the whole dark evil Spider-Man thing coincide with the Doc Ock story. He goes a little bit too far, almost kills Ock for stealing MJ or something. Then after they drown the sun thing, he lets the suit go. Brock loses credibility for misreporting something on Octavius. And then him and Harry have a big debacle in Spider-Man 3. While Venom is torturing people around the city, claiming that he's Spider-Man, and then he fights Venom at the end of the movie. I don't know. That may not have been worked out. I can probably find a better way to write this up. I had a good one earlier today when I was eating lunch, but I can't remember what it was. It had something to do with the symbiote being introduced in Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man 3 being nothing about Venom. Shoot, you could... I mean, Sandman didn't need to be in this at all. His introduction was pointless. His role in the movie was somewhat pointless. The only reason he was there was to... What? He was going to lose his mind via the symbiote anyway. He didn't need a rage factor added into the movie on top of it. Sandman's introduction was completely pointless in this movie. He had no real impact on this movie at all. Probably one of the more interesting things this story did right was how it continued off of the Harry wanting payback on Spider-Man story. But then at the end, when we found out the butler knew the entire time and waited until the last minute to tell him, then the whole story felt stupid and unnecessary because it could have easily been avoided, like going off of this movie series timeline like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, depending on how long it was in between Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man 1. So and then there was the continuation of Peter and MJ's terribly, terribly unstable relationship, which in Spider-Man 1 was kind of establishing the base for what it could be. In Spider-Man 2, it was them trying to figure out if they really wanted to be with each other or not. And at the end, they kind of got together. So in this one, it should have been them expanding on their relationship to the point of marriage. And it almost got there until that stupid thing with Harry breaking them up. And then we're right back to where we were in Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3 basically had the same love story written in there twice, but kind of handled differently in terms of why it was like that. So that story arc wasn't concluded properly. It was right back where it was at the end of the second movie. And kind of at the first movie, because they were deciding on if they wanted to be with each other or not. And on top of that, any kind of character development Peter had in Spider-Man 2 was completely dropped because of the stupid emo Peter nonsense that happened in the middle of this movie. And that's a problem with this entire movie trilogy, in my own opinion, is that Peter doesn't change at all. In Spider-Man 1, he's trying to establish himself as a man. Trying being the key word. Trying to establish his love life. At Spider-Man 2, he's still trying to establish his love life, still trying to find out who he is. And then in Spider-Man 3, he's kind of still trying to establish his love life, and because of the black suit, still trying to figure out who he is. So he literally, it's like the same character development in 3 straight movies. He never becomes of anything from it. It just loops itself. And it makes it hard to love a character when he doesn't learn from his mistakes and grows off of it. He has to constantly loop through the same problems and the same development through 3 movies. And on top of that, this Spidey never made me smile. One of the things I like about Spidey is that he could put a smile on my face when I'm watching him or reading him do something awesome, along with feel bad for him because of his struggles. But this Spider-Man is all about the struggles. Peter has 3 main quirks about him: hard life, scientific genius, and a smart aleck. This movie got rid of the genius part for the most part. There were a few moments here and there that showed his brilliance, but nothing too concrete to make it feel like it was anything going deep into, and removed the humor part. So what are we left with? The hard life part. And it overtook the other 2 spots to where it became almost unbearable to watch. And that mostly has to do with him not developing, because if he developed, he would have gotten more happy, and then the dramatic stuff would have slid away. But this also had something to do with MJ being a whiny douchebag the entire time. In Spider-Man 2, she was just marrying some dude because Peter wasn't what she wanted him to be. And in this movie, she let Harry convince her to break up with Peter because, shut up, that's why. There was no valid reason for her to go through with this, but she did. Her cheating on Peter with Harry for that one kiss scene didn't help things either. And then her not telling Peter that she got fired from the play and then expecting him to understand why she's hurt on top of it all is ridiculous. She gets on to Peter for not understanding her, but she doesn't tell him why she's sad so he can understand her. She's a tool in all of these movies. And I hate Dunce's MJ so much. But like I said, this movie just doesn't conclude. I know there was going to be a Spider-Man 4. But, I mean, look at Star Wars, for instance. There were 2 trilogies. The first trilogy, I'm going in chronological order of movies, was Anakin's life up until he became Vader. And what was the second trilogy? Luke trying to win the war for the Rebels. I haven't seen Star Wars in so long. I don't remember what they were called. For like Han and everybody. Trying to knock the Sith and the Empire out of the way. So even if there was going to be a 4, and they said there was going to be a 4, 5, and 6, so that could have been a completely different trilogy that had its own 3-act plot. So even if Spider-Man 3 wasn't going to be the end, it should have been the end of the love story arc, even though it could have easily have been done in the span of 2 movies, but wasn't. So what, were you gonna let this thing leech all the way through 6 movies or something? No! You should have concluded some story arcs here. So just in case it was the ending, you could leave with things answered and on a good note. But no. Things ended the exact same way they did in 2 and 1. Nothing was accomplished here. It's a 3-act story that leaves just as many answers as it did at the end of the first 2 acts. Along with stupid characters, unnecessary add-in villains, and The worst incarnation of one of Spider-Man's biggest villains ever. I'm talking about Venom. Spider-Man 3 is just a mess. There were so many good concepts in this movie that were handled so poorly that this movie comes off as a complete joke to Spider-Man and to all the characters that were involved in this movie. Everything, just about everything about this movie was stupid, and story elements that should have been written one way weren't. I feel if this movie was solely the black suit arc, it would have been fine. Or at least have the black suit introduced in 2 to where Venom could have been more fleshed out. In this film, it would have helped. But that's among other problems with the characters and the plot and everything. This movie is just stupid. Someone on my Spidey page, I forgot your name at the moment, said that you have to look at this movie as a comedy or else it will be bad. I'm beginning to think that's true because there are just so many moments in this movie that make me want to hit people. It is a bad movie in almost every faction. De-develops characters and having to redevelop them again. Stupid moments that could have easily been avoided if a character had opened their mouth 2 movies ago or a movie ago. Bad handling of villains, just everything. I really can't think of a positive from this movie. I really can't. I don't know if there is a positive from this movie. I mean, we got to see Venom in live action, but it was the worst incarnation of Venom I've ever seen. Well, next to Spider-Man Unlimited's Venom, but then again, that whole show was stupid to begin with. But I don't know. But after that travesty of a movie, Raimi left because he felt like he was being too pressured to make the 4th movie. He felt like he wasn't going to have it out in time, so he just quit. So due to Sony either losing the license to Marvel, they had to make another movie. They decided to reboot it with a new director, new cast, new plot, new everything. And thus we got 2012's release of The Amazing Spider-Man. After these 3 movies, I was hopeful that this one would save my faith in live-action Spider-Man movies. Did it? Well, after this movie, you can't go any further down than you already have, so yeah.